Mr. Ramond Lamai is an entrepreneur and a youth consultant. He is the country director of Kowa Youth Development Foundation in Jalingo, the Taraba State headquarters. Mr. Lamai, a very good evening to you. It's good to have you join us on the program.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
All right. So let's start this way. In Nigeria, it's been observed that people speak in discordant terms, especially the ethnic nationalities. Have you observed that? And why is that the case?
Thank you. We are an evolving nation. The history of Nigeria predisposes us to the kind of situation we are having today, where the different ethnic groups are speaking in different tones. It is because of where we are coming from. We are yet to reach a point where we become galvanized as a nation, become united such that we'll be able to speak with one voice. So what is playing out is a natural fallout of the fact that we are still evolving towards nationhood. So the different discordant tunes you are seeing are simply the fallout of the journey towards nationhood for us as a nation.
But should it be this bad that ethnic nationalities will not be able to agree on virtually everything?
Well, it didn't used to be as bad as this, but the current situation is also a function of the immediate circumstances in which we find ourselves today, where you discover that people are now tending towards preservation, towards self-survival. So every group of people in Nigeria today are trying to just stay afloat. There's what you could call a tribal or ethnic cold war going on in Nigeria today in such a way that you see every ethnic group is trying to just protect its own interests because of the larger factor of our lack of unity at the center. The central forces are operating in such a way that they don't tend to bring us together. Therefore, we are trying to survive by all means. Each group is trying to find a way of surviving within the system that is becoming choking, that is becoming a bit difficult to survive. So call it is a case of trying to survive the times in which we are in Nigeria today.
Okay, so I'm going to call your attention to what happened during the regime of former President Muhammadu Buhari, when the farmer elders clashes was at its peak at that time. That government at that time suggested Ruga. Many of the states that kicked against it at that time, reports have it that today they are embracing this Ruga. So how would you place that? Is it a case of, distrust among ethnic nationalities, or it's a case of governance being mishandled by those at the aims of affairs? Or why? Why are these policies somersault, fueled by ethnic suspicion?
The issue is that we have not yet, as a country, as a government, laid the foundation for the basic factors that can provide people to trust the system. So the system as currently obtains operates in such a way that people become skeptical and suspicious towards government policy, because government itself has not demonstrated that capacity to carry everybody along in a more inclusive, embracive way that people can feel belong to whatever policy the government is rolling out. So the Ruga issue in particular came about in such a way that people are beginning to suspect some kind of manipulation behind it. When they juxtapose the issue of Ruga in relation to other problems country, other levels concerning other ethnic groups that have not been attended to. When you now floated the Ruga as a national policy, people begin to wonder whether that should take precedence over other concerns, and why are other concerns not being addressed with the same measure of effort that the government was putting in. So the government gave enough reason for that suspicion that it was a one-sided policy that was churned out in the interest of a particular ethnic group in Nigeria.
But
So,
when you look
before
at the fact that this same policy is not being embraced, by those who initially kicked against it, would you say it was anything apart from whatsoever thing Muhammadu Buhari, brings, or what exactly is the case? The type of, rejection that many of these policies suffered on the former President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, you begin to ask yourself, what has actually changed such that those who rejected it in the past are now embracing it? Could the Jega Committee have performed any wonder that is not known to Nigerians? I give you an instance. At that time, people are talking of ethnic cleansing. That was one of the allegations leveled against, the government at that time, that it was promoting, ethnic cleansing. You remember the Fulanization agenda as alleged by prominent Nigerians at that time. But these policies are now being embraced today. Is it the Atairu Jega Committee that has made the difference, or it was a case of anything apart from what Muhammadu Buhari, will bring at that time?
No, it is far from that. The people, I can see exactly the level of acceptance given to that program today, as you are putting it. But we are looking at a situation where the government that brought the policy itself was swimming in the pool of accusations of tribalism. A government that was seen not to be objective towards other ethnic nationalities in Nigeria. So that gave that particular government the image of a one-sided government. So that was why it was more pronounced at that time. In the present situation, the policy still remains challenged by a lot of people across the country, across the tribal groups. People don't see why it should be, because the policy, the Ruga policy, is taking care only of the Fulani cattle rearers' interests. Other cultural groups, other ethnic groups don't find any relevance in this. So as far as generality Nigerians are concerned, it's still a thorny issue. So I don't see it as being accepted in the present situation at all.
Okay, so
it is still a challenge policy.
How do you also explain that which is going on between the Middle Belt and the core North, as it were? In Nigeria, you have the South and the North. And of course, an average Southerner will want to, regard states like Plateau, Nasarawa, Benue State as, a northern state, as it were. Though some persons would dispute this. But that is not the case now. The mutual suspicion between the Middle Belt region, and I'm sure you are from the Northeast, there is this mutual suspicion between the Middle Belt and the Northwest, Northeast, and you begin to ask yourself, oh, what has happened to this monolithic North that was being, touted in the past? Plateau State, Benue State, will suspect someone, from Benue State as we speak, or I will suspect someone from Borno State as we speak. The Middle Belt region sees itself as, a pseudo North region, as it were. So you even look at it. Why are things being taken this far. If the North Central, those in the North Central belt will, suspect the moves and activities of those in the North, Northeast, Northwest. Is there any justification for that?
Well, call it political awareness, call it cultural revolution or rebirth, whatever it is. There's a new wave of awareness coming upon Nigeria. That takes us back to where we started. The suspicion, the ethnic suspicion in Nigeria today exists across all the regions of Nigeria. It's not just the Middle Belt versus the Far North. It's a general problem. When you are now sitting on the issue of the Middle Belt versus the Far North, well, it boils down to the same issue of people trying to come out of what they felt has been a case of suppression. So, like I said, particularly the people have become aware of political rights, become aware, feeling politically suppressed. Now, you know that politics is taking, giving, receiving. Our national politics is about sharing from the national cake. Hitherto, the monolithic North has always taken the national cake for the supposed North, entire North. And then at the end of the day, you discover that in the course of sharing this so-called national cake, this other part of the North felt isolated, felt relegated, felt denied, and over time, the issue has become pronounced and people are now beginning to react. So what you are seeing happening in the North is a case of high level of political awareness and also some kind of cultural reawakening that the people are going through. People are beginning to want to assert their identity. They want to also lay claim to their rights, whatever those rights are. They want it. Somebody hitherto has been collecting on their behalf and not giving to them. That seems to be the general feeling across the Middle Belt. The Middle Belt feels shortchanged in this northern affair. So that is what is playing out. And it's going to continue because people are still feeling really, really denied and even with their own interests.
To those who believe that this is claiming rather too many lives in Nigeria, would you agree with them? Even in Taraba State, the Jukuns and the thieves, occasionally you see them being at loggerheads. Is there anything, that you would say is responsible for this? In Benue State, as we speak, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. Now, the question is, who are the ones carrying out this genocide, as the people there will call it, in Plateau State? You get to hear of similar things. What is going on?
It is the general security situation in Nigeria, actually. This is not an issue that is limited to the Middle. You know that Nigeria has been, the last 1 or 2 decades, have been going through serious period of insecurity. So that is what is playing. The cases you have cited, both in Taraba and Plateau State, they are issues that are linked to the general national insecurity situation. Because whatever may be the case, you still get to hear that these attacks are being carried out by bandits, by Fulani headsmen or kidnappers and people of all kinds of descriptions that are actually not from within those areas.
And some persons are not comfortable. Comrade, some persons are not comfortable with that allegation. They call it ethnic profiling. That and I think it's one of the issues that the former administration, before this incumbent one, suffered. This issue of ethnic profiling. And that was why I asked what is going on in Plateau State, in Benue State especially. Many persons have lost, their fatherland. They are losing their title. Some have lost it entirely. Now, if you want to attribute it to a particular ethnic group, they call it ethnic profiling. And of course, the question is, can this allegation be proven? So the middle belt, you look at Nasarawa State, you look at Plateau State, you look at Benue State, the type of attack, though there is insecurity, but what is ravaging Zamfara is different from, and maybe Borno State, Zamfara, Borno State and Sokoto State, two regions now. I've drawn from two regions. You discover that it is different from what is happening in the middle belt in Benue State. You see these non-state actors attacking a village, killing hundreds of people without taking a pin, without talking to anyone. So is that still a general insecurity that is ravaging Nigeria? Some have argued that there is something peculiar about the Middle Belt region.
Absolutely no. The Middle Belt situation, insecurity situation, is not different from the larger Nigerian situation. It is actually integral and part of it. I can tell you for free that we are the ones on the ground, and we see these things. We are not reading them on the news. We are not picking them on the social media. As I'm speaking with you, throughout last night, I was writing a story of a kidnapping situation, of a very gory story of a woman who was kidnapped, taken away from her home in the middle of the night. And the story is such a tragic one. And when you eventually get to hear who are the culprits, Fulani. So we cannot overemphasize the fact that we have people that came through the border from across our national borders, who have invaded our communities, who are causing this havoc. And then people try to deny it. But however you look at it, give me instances of such cases and identify the culprit behind us and tell us who they are. If they can do it, then fine, we will change the narrative. But we are giving out what actually happened and what we know the actor knows us. So if somebody has something different to us, bring it to the table. But for now, this is what we see. These are the people perpetrating this evil act against our communities.
Okay.
It's there on the record. It's there.
But let's cast our minds back. The federal government of Nigeria doesn't waste time in profiling, any sects whose activities is inimical, to the security of Nigeria. We've seen action taken against IPOB, fighters. Just yesterday, an action was taken against the Lakurawa sect through a court, a competent court. The government has got an injunction proscribing that group, labeling it a terrorist organization, will sing Boko Haram. Now, if this claim, and that was why I said earlier on that it doesn't go that well with some persons, they call it ethnic profiling. Don't you think if truly these ones that you are labeling, accusing, if they are culprits, don't you think that the federal government of Nigeria would have taken an action against them?
Well, you can understand why we are facing this issue of ethnic tensions, ethnic discordance, and all the other factors that are putting us apart. What is the issue? The issue is that government must be seen to be honest, sincere, objective to national issues. But when you see government policy that tends to isolate some others and draw and include some others, this is where the problem is. So those cases you have cited, those instances, A clear indication of where we are missing is at the leadership level, where you label a particular group of people, you call them terrorists, and then another ones who are doing exactly the same thing. They are carrying out the same act, and then those are the ones you are not labeling them as terrorists. You are embracing them. You are accommodating them. So
But
that's where the problem is.
Comrade, don't forget that intelligence is with the government. The government spend humongous amount of money to gather intelligence. If they are guilty, if they should be proscribed, don't you think that they would have been proscribed? What gives you the impression that the government is selective in its judgment?
It is what we see in the public space. It is what we see happening, that you understand that there's no level playing ground in some of these policies regarding to some of these groups. So, of course, if a group is found to be culpable, they are responsible for criminality, no doubt they should be brought to book. The law should take its course. But we are not seeing that in some cases where a particular group of people that should also face the music will not be brought to the law, and then some others are chased about. So this is where the disconnect is. There's a disconnect at that level.
Okay. How would you explain that of Kaduna South, Kaduna North? You look at what is happening there. How would you describe that situation? Kaduna South, Kaduna North. How would you describe the situation there?
The story of Southern Kaduna is well known to all those who are conversant with the political history of the region. Southern Kaduna a case of tension over years. Most of the killings and attacks that take place in Kaduna State, you trace them to Southern Kaduna. Then, politically speaking, they are people that have been isolated from the mainstream politics of the state, as such that it appears as if their votes don't count in that state in terms of who they elect as political leaders. So that has been the trend in the Southern Kaduna. The northern part of Kaduna, there has not been an issue. Now, you take stock of all the crises, all the killings going on in Kaduna State, and you will see that most of these killings, most of these attacks take place in Southern Kaduna. Why are they not happening in the northern part of the state, where the key political actors come from? So that's the question you should be asking. So when you have a situation where a particular part becomes the battleground, a particular part of the state becomes the battleground, where attacks incessantly take place over the years. We are talking about over 2-3 decades now, this crisis happening in Southern Kaduna, and it's still going on. Nothing is changing. So take count of all the crises and then put it in opposition to the northern part of Kaduna State. What would you say is the ratio? So what is happening in Southern Kaduna is a clear case of discrimination and isolation from the system, which of course happens in other states of the nation, that eventually leads to the case of the desire for self-determination, for self-preservation that we have talked about before now. So there is no doubt about the fact that the issue of Southern Kaduna is a case of the leadership that has not been objective, leadership that has not been neutral in dealing with issues of insecurity there.
All right, so before year 2023, there were allegations that the then government treated the issue of these non-state actors with kid gloves. That was when Nigeria had a northern president. Now that Nigeria has a southern president, you know, if truly this allegation is true, have you wondered that if truly it is true, why then is the southern president not taking action against, these ones? And that's one of the things that those who stood by the then government saying this is nothing but ethnic profiling. This is one of the things that, pointing accusing fingers at. Okay, if it's a case of a northern president shielding these ones, what of a southern president? Could he be shielding them? Because for the past 2 years now, no action has been taken against, these ones, in spite of the hues and cries.
Are you talking about the political leadership in Nigeria?
Yes.
Well, whatever happens, we know that profiling or not profiling, somebody has a way of looking the other way when these things are happening. So it doesn't matter that we now have, what do you call it? Is it a Christian or Southern? How did you put it? A Southern president, isn't it?
Yes.
So it could be a Southern president. It could come from the South. But what was the structure that brought him in? What was the arrangement? What are those configurations that surround the presidency as we speak? So we know that there are issues that usually go beyond the mere facade that we see in public space. The actual power, the power source in Aso Rock, we know goes beyond what we see. And what happens behind, and is what has been happening over the years. Namely that there are usually hands that are manipulating things from behind, and some will say we are speculating, but that has been the trend. So it doesn't matter that the current president is from the South, but the structure, the structure that was used under the former regime, those structures are there. Some of these key government actors who were in the former regime are still on ground. So nothing has really changed. Nothing. The president is only one man. He cannot control things everywhere across the country in every state. So
all right,
now goes down to the structure that has been on ground, that has been manipulating things in Nigeria. That structure is still there and is still working, irrespective of who the president is. Then you will now begin to ask, who holds the end of the stick of this structure? That's the one you should be guessing.
all right. We'll look at this issue of structure, but let's talk about the controversial tax reform bills. You discover that it's assumed an ethnic, dimension. Ethnic coloration is playing out. It's become the North versus the South. Why? Issue of tax reform bills. Should it be the case? You now see the South, being pitched against the North. For instance, the presidency proposed 60% derivation, as one of the formulas that will be used to share the VAT. But the governors came together, all the governors in Nigeria came together and approved 30%. And the presidency said, okay, let's go with that. 20% on population, 50% on equity. But that seems not to go down well with some northern elements. And of course, they've been talking tough. Again, ethnic coloration has been given to it. Why?
Why? Because we have always politicized everything in Nigeria. No matter what it is, it will always be politicized. So what is going on concerning this tax regime is a clear case of the issue assuming political dimension rather than the economic policy that it should be. So the why is that the political actors are not comfortable with the arrangement and because they want something that will continue to give them the leverage to provide for them what they have enjoyed over the decades, over the years. They are used to it, so any attempt to take it away from them will generate this kind of controversy and opposition that we are seeing. So it's not strange, that is expected. But be that as it may, the tax regime itself needs to assume a more nationalistic view, and then for us, for some of us, we even feel that the restructuring should start from the political structure on ground. I mean, restructuring of the political scenario should precede this tax regime and this tax arrangement that they are trying to put in place. Because we believe that the major issue with Nigeria today is our political system. Once we can't get the system right, every other thing will continue to be problematic, as we are having, even with the issue of the tax system. So for us, it is like you are putting the cart before the horse. You better restructure the political system so that you can now put on it any economic system that you want to put. It should be able to go. So what is happening? The current tax regime looks like a restructuring that does not fit the present political system on the ground. So that is where some of us even have an issue. But as to it's about what should come to the north and what should not come, we know that that will always be there. It has always been there, and it will continue to be there because of the faulty political structure that we have on the ground, that we are asking that we should restructure and go back to what we had before, which was more better, which also enhanced the economy of Nigeria better than what we are having today. So it's a whole gamut of issues that need to be traced right from the political system through to the economic system. So okay. I think that they are just
that some persons I believe in restructuring in the north. Some will say it is strange. The impression is that the north, is usually weary of the south when this issue, or the north is suspicious of the south whenever this issue of restructuring comes up. Some persons will argue that with these tax reform bills and some other moves of President Bola Tinubu, it is fiscal restructuring taking place. Do you agree with them?
It doesn't look like it. I don't agree. What I would rather like to say is that we should focus squarely on the call for restructuring of Nigeria, which all of us should be talking about. But the issue of tax, it doesn't apply in the current situation as it is.
Okay, so the argument is that the value-added tax, the sharing formula, has been so favorable to the north over the years, and that any attempt to tinker with the sharing formula, we've heard northern leaders, talking tough on this particular subject matter. You look at what the likes of Aline Dume, are said on this tax reform, and you begin to ask yourself, what exactly is the position of the north on this? Does the north, have any position on these tax reform bills?
Well, when you say not, you see, you are taking us back to the issue of the definition of the not. So, who are the not actually? Because you have a case where some people begin to become vocal, to begin to champion certain ideas, and then it is now described as not. So we don't really understand those who are representing the North. But as far as the average northern person is concerned, the northern man wants to see the fact that he lives in a better environment, is able to send his children to school, that he could afford at least 2 square meals for his family, and the things that can make for a better life for him. That is what the average northern person is concerned about. And if a government policy can make that possible, that is what the northern person will want, because of the present high level of poverty, impoverishment, and hunger in the land. So the average the northern masses are for what will better their lives. Any other argument beyond this is just a question of some people trying to champion their own personal opinions and personal agenda, different from what concerns and affects the North as a whole.
Okay, so in this case, what exactly do you think will benefit the North? The template initially suggested by the presidency, or that which the governors agreed on? Some of these northern leaders are even saying that in terms of derivation, 10% is okay. Whereas some notable figures in the South are saying that this issue of population is nothing but a ruse, because to them, they would argue that population anywhere and everywhere around the globe is usually more in the southern parts of any given country than the northern part, and that how come the north is more populated than the south, and that if anything will be done once population is used, then it's to the advantage of the north and to the detriment of the south.
Naturally, when you put a country like Nigeria on the table and you try to do the demographic analysis, definition of human beings. So the variation is a natural order. Now, whether people now agree that the variations are different, but what is important is, and I want to repeat what I've said earlier on, that if the country is restructured, all these arguments of percentage allocation, revenue allocation, those things will just disappear from the table. All these arguments and contentions are coming up because of this unworkable, this tight, this rigid political structure we have on the ground, that you have one almighty federal government dishing out largesse to the state, and so you create a situation of rat race where the states are now competing for everything from the federal government, and come to the regional level now. You see, the argument is there between the north and the south and all of that, but we are saying that all that will disappear from the table when the country is properly restructured.
So okay, so let me open the phone lines for engagement. In case you are watching the program, the number to call will be displayed on your television screen. That is the number. Call in, and of course, let's get to hear from you. It is the state of the nation here on Impact Television. 0907 072 0980. We're looking at the challenges of nationhood in Nigeria. Why is it so difficult for ethnic nationalities to work together in Nigeria? This monstrous suspicion. And of course, we are looking at this issue of tax reform bills controversy. Why are controversies trailing the tax reform bills? Call in and let's get to hear from you. I have with me on Zoom this evening Mr. Comrade Ramond Lamai. Of course, he's an entrepreneur, and of course, is also a youth leader. He is the leader of Kowa Youth Foundation. So Colin, and let's get to hear from you. Comrade, if we talk about restructuring, how should it be approached? How should this country be restructured? What is your own concept of restructuring?
Well, I don't have a personal concept other than what has been in the public space, other than what most Nigerians are championing for, that we revert to the 1963, which gave the different regions leverages, opportunities to move at their pace and to maximize the potential economic, socio-political opportunities available within their regions. And then we have a joint center that is also funded and then can respond to national, global issues on behalf of Nigeria. But head to tail, it is the call to have some kind of autonomy given to the regions to be able to operate and move at their own pace, rather than this unitary rigid structure that we have that hasn't taken us anywhere since we adopted the new system, the current system we are operating.
Okay, so do you believe, in all honesty, that the North, as some persons, would allege that the North is averse to anything restructuring?
Once again, I have the problem of which part of the North is averse to the issue of restructuring. But yes, you could have some vocal voices across the North who may take positions that are contrary to the general position. But once again, the generality of the northern people will want a system that works, a system that can give them a better life.
Who speaks for the North?
Structuring in such a way that they can get that better life, they go for it.
Who speaks for the North?
The people of the North.
The people of the North.
The people of the North can speak for themselves. The people of the North can speak for themselves. You see, the mistake we are making in Nigeria is that we have reduced communication to individuals, perhaps to key political figures, and we restrict the space so that you don't get to hear the voice of the masses. That has been the problem. That has been the situation that has created a disconnect between the leaders and the led. So the question of who speaks for the North, the answer will be the Northerners themselves. The masses of the North should speak for themselves. Nobody should represent people when it borders on issue of their survival, issue of how they survive from day to day. It should come from them.
Okay, so, but
it is time we develop a system of hearing from the people and not from some few select individuals or group of people who are usually champion causes that are different from the causes of the mass. So if you want to know what the northern people are saying about restructuring, please speak to the people, hear from the people.
Okay, so where will you place the likes of Arewa Consultative Forum, Northern Elders Forum? When all of these bodies, organizations speak, don't they speak on behalf of the North?
They don't.
Okay, let's pick this call. Hello, good evening.
They don't.
Good evening. Thank you. Please turn down the volume of your TV.
ask a question on that program. I'm serious. I'm interested in the program.
All right.
Yeah.
Your name and where you are calling from?
I'm Mr. Buya. Calling from Ondo State.
Mr. Boya from Ondo State.
Mr. Buya from Ondo State.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Boya from Ondo State. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to know, in those days, there were 3 regions in Nigeria. But now we have 6 geopolitical
zones.
We have 6. Now, are we going back? Are we going to say that now we have 6 regions? Now, are we going to break the country now into 6? This 6 north, south, and all those things. Is that what we are going by or what? That is what I want to know. I want to know how the regions will look like. How can we create them now? Because in those days, these are decisions we are not as much as this. But now you can see Nigeria are now agitating for self management. So how are we going to get the regions now? I want to know about it.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me bring Mr. Lamai back. So the model. The caller from Ondo State is asking regionalism. That's what you also preached, that if this country is going to be restructured, the country should be taken back to regionalism. Each region should develop at its pace. But he asked, what will happen to the geopolitical zones?
Sorry, maybe I was misunderstood on the issue of restructuring. I don't think it's purely a question of regionalism, which will now boil down to what he is asking, whether we should go back to the 3 regions and say we have 3 regions. Restructuring, as we are clamoring for, goes beyond just regional structure, dividing Nigeria into 2 or 3 or 4. It is that you need to reconfigure the entire country. And we mention region because whatever restructuring you are going to do is going to fall within the regions. That's why the issue of region is covered. So restructuring will act.
All right.
Actually,
hello.
Into such arrangement.
Good evening.
Will make it.
Okay, kindly call back on the program this evening. How urgent would you say restructuring is? How urgent should this country be restructured?
No, we are even behind time. We should have restructured long before now. So I say, how urgent? It is as urgent as we should have restructured before now. We are behind time. So whatever we are doing now, we are trying to catch up with time and say, do the needful so that we can move on at least from where we are.
Okay, as we wrap up this program, quickly, Mr. Lamai, some persons believe that technically President Bola Tinubu is restructuring Nigeria as we speak. Can you see that?
No, I don't think so. That is not what we see. It's far from it. Perhaps they can tell us in definite terms what the restructuring that are going on. Is the same system we have, is the same governmental structure, is the same modes of operation. What is being restructured here? I don't think so.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Comrade Lamai. This is where we're going to call it a wrap on the program this evening. Thank you.